The orchard house wasn't empty. The first 2 nights, Juniper barked at the basement door at exactly 2:14. On the 3rd night, she didn't bark. She backed away when a man below us whispered, "Back porch, June." That was the command her owners had written on my instruction sheet, and I had never used it anywhere near the basement. This happened last September, when I was 41 and working payroll for an orchard supply company in Wenatchee, Washington. My coworker Erin Bell asked me to stay at her house for 3 nights while she and her husband Cole attended a wedding in Boise. Their red heeler, Juniper, hated boarding kennels. I knew Erin well but had met Cole only twice. They had bought the house 8 months earlier. It stood outside Kashmir, at the end of a gravel lane, surrounded by old pear trees and a pine-covered ridge. The nearest neighbor's porch light was barely visible through the branches. The white farmhouse dated to the 1940s. Most of it was renovated, but the basement still had concrete walls, exposed pipes, a propane furnace, and old wooden shelves. Its door was in the mudroom beside the washer. Erin showed me the dog food, the Wi-Fi password, and the breaker panel. Cole pointed out that an old irrigation pump started automatically in the middle of the night. It runs from about 2:10 to 2:20, he said. The lights might dip when it kicks on. Nothing's wrong. He told me not to move the wine rack against the basement's plywood back wall because it covered unfinished plumbing. The warning seemed oddly specific, but old houses came with specific warnings. They left Friday afternoon. I made pasta, walked Juniper around the orchard, and read on the couch. She was alert but calm. When deer crossed the yard, she watched without making a sound. I went to bed in the upstairs guest room around 11:30. At 2:14, barking snapped me awake. Juniper stood in the mudroom facing the basement door, legs stiff and nose near the gap. Between barks, she made a low sound I felt through the floor. Outside, the irrigation pump sent a dull vibration through the house. I turned on the mudroom light and called her name. She looked at me once, then returned to the door. When I reached for the knob, she caught the cuff of my pajama pants gently in her teeth and pulled backward. I told myself there was probably a raccoon near a foundation vent. I opened the door and switched on the basement lights. Juniper stayed at the threshold. Nothing looked wrong downstairs. The windows were locked, and there was no exterior door. I checked the shelves, furnace, and bathroom. The only unusual thing was a faint smell of damp soil near the wine rack. The pump shut off while I was standing there. The vibration stopped, and Juniper stopped barking at the same moment. She still refused to come down. I slept on the couch. In daylight, the basement felt ordinary. Juniper followed me down while I moved laundry to the dryer and carried a tennis ball back upstairs. Saturday was warm and clear. I drove into town for coffee and walked Juniper along the canal. When we returned, a blue mug sat wet on the draining mat. I had used a travel cup and was certain the sink had been empty. That bothered me, but not enough to call anyone. I decided Erin must have left it there and I had missed it. Before Juniper's evening walk, I found one gray sneaker on the bottom basement step. Its match was still in the mudroom. The basement door had been closed all day. I called Erin. She listened, then laughed a little too quickly and said Juniper sometimes carried shoes. When I mentioned the barking at 2:14, there was a pause. She hears animals in the crawl space, Erin said. Cole thinks something gets under the porch. Just keep the basement door shut tonight. 5 minutes later, Cole sent me a separate message. Don't move the shelves. Foundation is unstable back there. He had capitalized the whole thing. I read it several times, wondering why he thought I planned to move anything. That night, I stayed downstairs with every light on. At 2:14, the pump started and Juniper ran to the basement door, barking harder than before. I opened it only wide enough to look down. The light over the furnace was swinging. Fresh mud marked the concrete near the back wall. Then something knocked once from behind the plywood, the flat. Controlled knock of knuckles against wood. I shut the door and locked it. Juniper continued barking for almost 6 minutes. When the pump stopped, the basement went quiet. I did not sleep. Around 6, I packed my overnight bag and put it in my car. I planned to take Juniper to my apartment and explain later. Before I left, Cole called. He said Juniper had severe separation anxiety and might bolt if taken away. He claimed the pump vibration always made her act strange and that I was letting an old house get into my head. I nearly believed him. Cole was standing in a hotel lobby in Boise, speaking calmly, while sunlight came through the kitchen windows. I agreed to stay one more night. That afternoon, Juniper pulled me toward blackberry vines below the ridge. Behind them was a low concrete pump house. Its narrow metal door had an open padlock, and fresh boot marks crossed the dirt. I did not go inside. I photographed the prints and walked straight back to the house. My phone charger was missing from the guest room. I found it in the basement, plugged into an outlet beside the wine rack. A silver energy drink sat behind one of the bottles. The can was cold. I stopped looking for harmless explanations. I locked the basement door, wedged a chair under its knob, and called the county's non-emergency line. A deputy was coming from Leavenworth, but might take 40 minutes. I waited in the kitchen with my coat on and my car keys in my pocket. Juniper lay beside me, watching the mudroom. At 2:13, she stood up before the pump had started. The lights dimmed. The low mechanical hum rose beneath the house. Juniper approached the basement door but did not bark. From below, a man's voice said quietly, "Back porch, June." She whimpered and backed into my legs. The chair moved half an inch as someone tested the knob from the other side. I did not call out. I took Juniper to my car and drove to the end of the lane, where I called 911. The house stayed dark behind the orchard, and nobody followed us. 2 deputies arrived 12 minutes later. They entered through the front while I waited in their vehicle with Juniper. After about 20 minutes, one of them came back and asked who Eli Bell was. Eli was Cole's younger brother. I had heard his name once but had never met him. He had helped renovate the house before Cole fired him for stealing tools. Behind the wine rack, the deputies found a plywood panel latched from the other side. It opened into an old fruit cellar connected to the pump house. Eli was hiding there with bolt cutters and jewelry from the upstairs bedroom. The cellar held a mattress and property stolen from local garages. Eli had used it for weeks. The pump's vibration covered the metal doors and hidden panel. Juniper heard or smelled him first. Eli admitted moving my shoe, using the mug, and taking my charger. He wanted me uneasy enough to leave. He knew Juniper's command because he had helped train her. That explanation should have been the worst part. It wasn't. Eli told the deputies that Cole knew he was coming. At first, Cole denied it. Then investigators searched Eli's phone. The messages began Thursday night, before Aaron and Cole left. Cole had written, "Amy will be in the guest room. Pump starts at 2:14. Use the orchard side. Take your boxes and don't let Aaron know you were inside." There was another message from Saturday morning. After the first night of barking, Eli wrote, "The dog heard me." Cole answered, "Amy thinks it's the pipes. Finish before Monday." Cole had convinced me to stay after learning the dog heard his brother. He wanted the stolen property removed before a contractor arrived Monday, and warning me would have ruined the plan. Eli was charged with burglary and possession of stolen property. Cole was later charged for helping him enter and conceal evidence. Aaron had believed Cole's story about animals under the porch. She knew nothing about the cellar. I still think about Juniper pulling me away from the knob. Everyone else had an explanation ready: the pump, pipes, crawl space, foundation. The dog understood the truth. The orchard house was never empty, and Cole had made sure the man beneath it knew exactly where I would be sleeping. The children in the blue raincoats. The first time the two children stood on my porch calling me Dad, I assumed they had the wrong house. The second time, the boy slid a photograph under my door. It showed me with my arm around him at his 9th birthday party, in a city I had never visited, 6 months before I knew he existed. This happened 2 years ago, when I was 54. I am a structural engineer, and my company sent me to Boone, North Carolina, for a 5-month bridge project. I rented a cedar-sided house outside town from Judith and Alan Pike, a retired couple in Raleigh. Their nephew, Wes, handled the rental, copied my driver's license, and met me with the keys. The house sat on 6 wooded acres at the end of a steep gravel road. A creek crossed the back slope, and an old tobacco barn leaned near the trees. The place had a brown couch, pine table, 2 bedrooms, and a stone fireplace. Most nights I heated dinner, reviewed inspection notes, and went to bed early. My morning started before 6. I left muddy boots on a rubber tray, filled a thermos in the dim kitchen, and watched fog settle between the trees while the porch bulb attracted moths. The isolation had seemed useful when I signed the lease. After dark, the creek and an occasional truck on the county road were usually the only things I heard. I had been there 11 days when someone knocked on the front door at 11:40 on a Sunday night. It was not an adult knock. 3 soft taps, a pause, then 2 more. Through the glass, I saw 2 figures in matching blue raincoats. The boy looked 10, the girl might have been 7. I left the deadbolt locked and asked what they wanted. The boy lifted his face. "Dad, Mom says you have to stop pretending." I told him he had the wrong house. The little girl moved closer to the glass and said, "You promised Mason could paint his room red." They used my first name next. They knew I worked on bridges and drove a silver Ford. Then the boy asked why I had stopped answering their mother. No house was within easy walking distance, and it was close to freezing. I told them to wait while I called the sheriff. When I picked up my phone, they ran toward the trees. A deputy arrived 25 minutes later. Small shoe prints led past the tobacco barn and ended beside fresh tire tracks. He checked the roads but found nothing. The next morning, Wes said no children had lived there and suggested a prank from a nearby vacation rental. That sounded possible until I found a folded drawing in the mailbox. It showed the cedar house in green crayon. 4 people stood in front of it, labeled Mom, Mason, Evie, and Dad. Under Dad, someone had written Thomas Keene in an adult's neat block letters. The sheriff's office found no missing children matching my description. A deputy told me to keep the doors locked and call if they returned. For 2 nights, nothing happened. I started convincing myself the children belonged to a confused parent who had found the wrong Thomas online. On Wednesday, I found a muddy child's handprint outside my bedroom window. Beneath it, written through the dirt with 1 finger, were the words "Mom is crying." That night I sat where I could see both doors. At 12:18, something tapped the bedroom glass. I switched on the floodlight and saw a blue raincoat vanish around the house. I called 911 before looking outside. Deputies searched the property again. This time they found a plastic grocery bag beneath the porch. Inside was a printed photograph. The picture showed a dark-haired woman behind a birthday cake. Mason and Evie stood beside her. I was behind Mason with a hand on his shoulder. Then I recognized my gray jacket from the employee photograph on my company's website. Someone had taken my face and body from that photograph and placed me inside a family memory. Wes came to change the locks. He asked to take the photograph to show the owners. When I said the sheriff had a copy, disappointment crossed his face. He asked about dating sites and angry ex-girlfriends. I was a widower with no children and had not dated since my wife died. After Wes left, I found a blue child's backpack beneath the bed in the unused room. It had not been there when I moved in. Mason Porter was written inside. The bag held shirts, an inhaler, a Dayton library card, and a photograph of the same woman. I did not touch anything else. I walked outside, called the sheriff, and waited beside my truck. This no longer felt like harassment. It felt like someone was building evidence inside my home. The library card gave deputies a real name. Mason Porter and his sister, Evelyn, lived with their mother, Lydia, in Ohio. They were not missing, but both had been absent from school all week. Calls to Lydia went straight to voicemail. The sheriff advised me to stay elsewhere. I packed a bag, but before I could leave, headlights appeared at the bottom of the drive. A dark minivan stopped near the porch. Lydia stepped out with both children. She looked exhausted, not threatening. She held a thick envelope against her chest and asked me to open the door. I spoke through it instead. "Thomas," she said, "you talked to us every night for 14 months. You told the kids this would be our house." I said someone had stolen my name. She pushed photographs and messages through the mail slot. The man in them had my face, my job, and details from my life, but none of the words were mine. Her online fiancé had told her to come to North Carolina. A property manager named Wes met her at a motel and warned that I might deny them because of a custody dispute. Wes drove the children to my porch, while Lydia waited near the barn. He returned Wednesday and took Mason's backpack, claiming he would place it in the child's new room as a surprise. I told Lydia the sheriff was on the way. She started crying. The children stood beside the minivan, watching me with the betrayed expression of people who believed I had abandoned them. 10 minutes later, another vehicle climbed the drive. It was Wes's pickup. He told Lydia to put the children in her van and told me to let him remove the backpack before police misunderstood. He did not know deputies already had it. Mason stared at him and said, "That's the man who put my bag in Dad's house." A patrol car turned into the driveway behind Wes's truck. He stopped in the gravel as a deputy ordered him to show his hands. Wes had access to rental applications, licenses, employment records, and interior photographs. He used them to build fake identities for romance scams. He contacted Lydia as Thomas Keene 14 months earlier. He sent edited photos, copied my company biography, and made voice messages from a public presentation. Lydia sent him almost $30,000. When she demanded a meeting, Wes sent her to North Carolina. The children at my door gave his fake identity a real address and the correct face. The backpack and photograph were meant to implicate me if she called police. Investigators found folders for 7 other men on Wes's computer. Each man had rented, inspected, or applied for one of the Pike properties. Their documents had become parts of different invented lives. Judith and Alan had not known what their nephew was doing, but one detail made my case different. Wes created the profile using my name more than a year before I rented the Cedar House. My company had used Pike Rentals before, and an old roster listed me as a future field supervisor. Wes began the scam before my assignment was confirmed. When I came to Boone, he recommended the remote house to our travel coordinator. I had not moved into a rental that happened to be connected to the fraud. Wes placed me there because the fraud already existed. He needed a real Thomas Keene to answer the door if Lydia ever came looking. Lydia and the children returned to Ohio. I still have the birthday photograph. What unsettles me is the way Mason smiles at the man wearing my face. The children were never pretending when they called me Dad. For more than a year, someone had been teaching them that my face meant they were finally going home. the note that timed my drive home. The note was waiting in the middle of my kitchen when I came home to a locked house. It said, "You made it back in 18 minutes. Your best time is 16. Then I noticed a line of wet boot prints crossing the floor. They ended at the pantry wall. This happened last fall, when I was 32. I work as an environmental field technician, and King County hired me for a 4-month project inspecting damaged culverts east of Enumclaw, Washington. My apartment in Seattle was too far from the survey area, so I rented a small cedar house on 5 acres near the foothills. Marla and Dennis Vance owned it. They lived in Tacoma and used their nephew, Luke, for repairs and yard work. The house stood behind firs at the end of a gravel lane. A cloudy greenhouse and a locked workshop sat near a creek. Beyond it, the woods climbed toward a ridge that disappeared in the morning fog. Inside, the place was plain but comfortable. 1 bedroom, a galley kitchen, an electric fireplace, and old pine floors that clicked when the heat came on. The pantry occupied most of the wall between the kitchen and laundry room. A co-worker named Gavin Price had sent me the listing. He said another seasonal inspector had liked the quiet. Gavin was in his 40s, knew every forest road in the county, and was the person everyone asked for advice. My routine rarely changed. I left before 7 with coffee and a waterproof clipboard, spent the day measuring pipes and photographing washouts, and was usually home a little after 6. The first message appeared during my 2nd week. It was written on a white inventory tag and tucked beneath the windshield wiper of my county truck. "You missed culvert 14. I had missed it. Blackberry vines covered the marker. I assumed Gavin had checked my route sheet, so I carried the tag inside and thanked him. He laughed and said he had been 50 miles away. 2 other technicians denied leaving it. Field crews played jokes on one another, so nobody seemed concerned. 2 days later, another tag was clipped inside my lunch bag. It read, "The north gate is locked. Take 410. That advice saved me a long detour. What bothered me was that my lunch bag had been zipped inside a locked equipment room. Gavin suggested that I had left it open and forgotten. I wanted to believe him. The messages stopped for almost a week. Then, on a rainy Tuesday, I found one beneath a stone on my front step. 612 again. You were very consistent." I listened to rain drip through the firs. No neighboring house was visible, and Gavin was the only co-worker who knew exactly where I lived. I called him. He sounded surprised and told me to photograph the tag. He offered to drive out, but involving a co-worker still felt more embarrassing than helpful. Marla said Luke had mowed the previous afternoon but had no reason to return. Luke called 10 minutes later. "I haven't been near the place today," he said. "Ask Marla." I locked both doors, checked the windows, and wedged the sliding one shut. The house had no attic access, and 6 rusted screws held the outside crawlspace hatch. I photographed them before bed. For several days, nothing happened. I varied my route, bought gas I did not need, and once sat in a pharmacy lot for 20 minutes. No vehicle followed me. On Friday, I arrived at 6:28. The doors were locked. The window dowel was still in place, and the photographs of the crawlspace screws matched exactly. That was when I found the note in the kitchen telling me my drive had taken 18 minutes. The wet prints were faint, as if someone had wiped the soles first. They crossed from the sink to the pantry and stopped in front of a shelf filled with canned soup. There were no prints leading into the kitchen. I backed outside and called the sheriff. Deputy Rosa Delgado searched the house while I waited near her car. She found no damaged lock or opening behind the pantry. The workshop had an owner padlock, so she could only look through its dusty window. Marla drove out with a spare key. She apologized repeatedly and insisted neither owner had entered. Luke arrived later and replaced both exterior locks while Delgado watched. Luke said the prints might be mine. That was possible, but it did not explain the tag. "Does anyone at work know you live alone?" he asked. When I said yes, he told me office pranks could become cruel. I spent 2 nights at a motel. On Sunday afternoon, I returned with 2 small security cameras. One faced the front door, the other faced the kitchen and pantry. Both sent alerts to my phone. The first night was quiet. At 2:06 on the second night, both cameras went offline at the same time. I woke when my phone vibrated and stayed in bed with the door locked until daylight. The router had been unplugged. A white tag was taped over its lights. That was rude. In the bathroom, my toothbrush, deodorant, and medicine had been arranged from tallest to shortest. Someone had drawn a small square on the mirror, exactly the shape of one of my cameras. I left immediately. Deputy Delgado returned and took the new tag. But again, there was no sign of entry. The replacement locks had not been picked. The windows were secured. The crawl space screws were unchanged. This time, she asked the owners to open the workshop. Marla said Luke kept its only key because it contained his tools. He claimed he was in Yakima and could not return until the following evening. Delgado told me not to stay. I returned to the motel and took 2 days off. Gavin brought dinner after work, listened patiently, and said something that stayed with me. "Whoever is doing this doesn't want your things," he said. "They want your reaction." He helped me search online for hidden camera detectors. The next morning, I bought one at an electronics store and returned to the house with Marla and Deputy Delgado. The device reacted near a smoke detector in the bedroom. Behind its plastic grill was a lens no larger than a shirt button. A second camera faced the shower through a ventilation cover. Neither device used my wireless network. Delgado called for additional officers. Marla began crying and said Luke had installed the smoke detectors during the summer renovation. When officers cut the padlock from the workshop, they found a plywood platform beneath the workbench. It lifted over a concrete stairwell that did not appear on the current house plans. The house stood on the foundation of an old logging office. A service passage once joined its furnace room to a generator shed. Luke had covered the kitchen end with cabinets but left one pantry shelf hinged. The passage explained the prints that ended at the wall. It also explained why the locks, windows, and crawlspace hatch never moved. Police found a chair, battery packs, inventory tags, and a laptop in the passage. Luke streamed the house to a private site whose subscribers paid to choose messages, move objects, or send him inside while a tenant was home. He had done it to 2 previous renters, although neither had called police. One left after finding kitchen drawers open. The other believed she was sleepwalking. Luke was arrested that afternoon at a storage unit outside Auburn. I assumed that was the end of it. It was not. 3 weeks later, Deputy Delgado asked me to identify several usernames from the site. Most meant nothing. One of them was milemarker16. That account had paid for the note timing my drive home. It had also supplied my work calendar, the combination to the equipment room, and a photograph showing where I kept my lunch bag. The payment records led to Gavin. He had found Luke's stream months earlier and watched the previous tenant. When my assignment was approved, he recommended the house. The Culvert 14 message proved to the other viewers that he could control what happened at my job as well as at home. Gavin was fired and later charged for his part in the surveillance. I transferred to another office and moved before the project ended. I used to think the worst moment was seeing wet footprints disappear into a solid wall. Now I think about Gavin sitting across from me at lunch, asking whether the notes looked handwritten or printed. The man inside the passage had placed the note in my locked house. But the man who chose every word had been helping me search for him.